Hello, a very warm welcome this evening, the 17th of August 2022. My name is Charles Odongotho, and today we are going to be looking at the lessons from the Kenyan just concluded presidential elections. Is it concluded? Some people may say yes, and celebrations are going on. Some will say not yet, because in the next few weeks, we are going to perhaps, if that final decision is made, we are going to be now following another stage after the announcement. But there is a president-elect for Kenya, our neighbors here, and within the East African community, a very important partner, Kenya, and that president-elect is Ruto William, and until that is changed, he is the president-elect awaiting the swearing in sometime in October or November thereabout. But to discuss those lessons and other matters pertinent to this election, I have from my extreme left, Counsel Edgar Tabaro. He's a lawyer with the KTA Advocates, and he is also a special envoy of the Khartoum government here in Uganda. Counsel Edgar, you come back here in, I think you are an old boy of this place, no running away from that history. Edgar Tabaro, for those who don't know, was at one time a CEO of this place, of the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. You're most welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, dear Charles and viewers. Just a little correction. Special envoy for the Umma party in Khartoum.
For the Umma party?
It's the oldest political party in Sudan, yeah, in the Khartoum, since 1981.
Wow.
And we're looking forward to big things after the transition government. We are looking.
I like that optimism, but good to have you.
Yes, I was managing director, the inaugural managing director of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. And I'm happy to be back home.
When it was transformed from
UTV and
UTV to UBC. Yes. Thank you very much. Next to Edgar is Counsel Dr. Daniel Rueza. Is a lecturer at Makerere University at the school, they call it. Counsel, you're most welcome back to the show. For you, it is not a maiden appearance, is it? You have been here before?
I've been here before, yes.
Good, and it's good to have you back.
Always glad to be here. Good evening, viewers. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Good. Next to Dr. Rueza is Counsel Jude Byamukama. It doesn't need much introduction. He has been around these things of court cases, Supreme Court, and Jude made a big name in our own election petition. That was the one of Right Honorable Mbabazi, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and he has never seen back. You know, he works with the J. Byamukama and Company Advocates. That's the law firm he runs. But you're most welcome, Byamukama.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
Good. Next to Jude is, we shall call him Counsel later. Not for now.
I love that.
Good, and I am encouraging you, take that name in the next 3-4 years. It's easy to do. It's possible, but Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi Martin, he is MP for Bardege Laibi in Gulu City. You're most welcome back from that very successful fundraiser that you had for your foundation for maternal health and other health matters. Yes.
But I wanted to remind you, a few months ago you had a discussion with me and you really inspired me. And so in the next few weeks I'll be giving you good news. Good.
Yes. I will be most happy. Good. Finally, the lady who has just come back from Nairobi, Sarah Birete, counsel as well. She is executive director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. It could never be a better discussion for Sarah. We are talking about constitutionalism, the rule of law, justice, fairness. I just want to warn all of us here that it must never be a legalese, a law class. Keep it simple, keep it, you know, the politics of law, the law of politics, but ensure...
Can I have my moment to greet the
viewers? Please go ahead. You know, Sarah can really bully people on this show, especially when she's the only lady. But please go ahead.
And I really thank you for putting me far away from her. Because we're going to have sparks.
Spats, Spats and sparks. Sarah, most welcome back.
Thank you.
Good. How was Nairobi?
It was peaceful.
Let's just start from there.
Yes.
How did it end? Your reflections. I know that last week you came to the show from Nairobi, but we didn't know so much then. Right now we know so much that has happened, and our interests are so many, diverse. You know, East African region, the integration process, collaboration. What does it mean for Uganda? Can we copy some of the good things? The bad ones, let's leave them. Can we? Those are some of the things we're going to be discussing. But let's start us off in 2 minutes, the reflections you had.
Well, the elections were organized from the basis that was set by the Supreme Court decision in 2017, which gave a lot of recommendations. The process was transparent from the beginning. There were reforms, although some reforms were rejected by Parliament for having been presented late. So not all the recommendations of the Supreme Court decision had been enacted into reforms, but the majority of them were. The law on regulating finances in campaigns also came late and was never enacted. What we noted, because it's important to note that as much as I went to observe elections as a chairperson for East and Horn of Africa Election Observer Network, we have a host institution in Nairobi, the Election Observer Group of Kenya, known as ELOG, which released a statement yesterday on the parallel voter tabulation. So in the long-term observation, what was noted was limited voter education, and then the use of traditional methods to do voter education, which did not inspire, especially the youth. When the voter registration update was conducted, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission had anticipated to register 4.5 million, but they only registered 1 million, and they missed 3.5 would be voters in this exercise, and the majority of them were young people. So when we started the short-term observation, we realized a few things, having got the background from our Kenyan colleagues. One of the main concerns was the manner of transmission of results. And it's important to note that the civil society actors in Kenya had raised this matter with the Electoral Commission. And in their discussions, there was a suggestion that the Electoral Commission would receive the images of results, display the images as they come in, but also have a tabulation on the screen as the images of results come in from the constituency tally centers. And this never happened. But there was transparency with the media, which was also allowed to run parallel tallies, transparency with civil society organizations, which were allowed to run a parallel voter tabulation tally that was released yesterday, and transparency with all the other actors. The campaigns were largely peaceful. There were a few cases of violence in a few areas, up to like 4 areas, where violence was observed in the election campaign. The other concern that we had noted was the 7 days, the constitutional framework for announcement of results. Our comment was that it would create anxiety.
That it is too long.
It was likely to spark off violence after the long wait, 1 week wait for results, especially given that presidential candidates were running their tallies, Media was allowed to tally. The results were up on the online portal, and this was a clear recommendation from the Supreme Court decision. So everybody had results, except they did not have the constitutional mandate to announce. And indeed, on Saturday, we saw the skirmishes of violence, and the observers, some of the observers were locked out of the bombers when they were fully accredited to observe the tallying and verification process. But also we saw the Azimio team having been locked out of bombers. I think that that was not good. And on the same day, the media was stopped from tallying results. So that compromised the larger transparency that had been credited, that had been observed in the electoral processes.
Okay.
It's important to note, Charles, before quickly as I summarize, that the Electoral Commission had accredited 77 observer missions with a total of 18,000 observers in the exercise. 16,500 observers stand up to observe elections, and we had greater transparency, greater access during the voting period as election observers.
Okay. Edgar, how was your observation of the process from what, picking from what Sarah has laid out, as an observer from outside, not exactly at Bomas or as it were?
No, critically, there are lessons to pick from. And in particular, in my realm of understanding, there are things to learn, there are things to unlearn, and there are things as well to relearn. Of paramount importance is that what we are seeing in Kenya, and I'm going to turn this into a mantra wherever I appear, is that what we are seeing in Kenya did not fall from the sky. They were deliberate, they were intentional, they were purposeful, insofar as deepening the democratization process is concerned. Sarah has alluded to the 2017 decision that gave the parameters that would govern the conduct of campaigns, conduct of the election day, and the conduct of tallying and the announcement of the winner. Why am I laying emphasis on this? Kenya has had a checkered history insofar as its democratization process is concerned. And the individuals, the protagonists, the pundits that we saw participating in this process have been either the underwriters of the so-called second liberation, which is in reference to the post-independence liberation and return to democracy in Kenya. You shall recall in 1982, there was a coup d'etat, an attempt to overthrow government, August 1982. And Raila, one of the persons who was fingered in that, not that he was convicted, but he was fingered, and he went into solitary confinement, suffered solitary confinement for 8.5 years. In the same period, they introduced Article 2A of their constitution that constitutionalized the one-party state. And that was a source of friction that produced stars like Martha Karua, who was
the running mate.
And I want to get away from the legal realm and show how
the political history.
Yes, how they were intentional about it.
Yeah.
That the democratization process has been a painstaking effort on part of the intelligentsia in Kenya. Now, Martha Karua, Raila Odinga are the stars of that democratization process. Gachagua,
the running mate of
Ruto, and Ruto were what they call the KANU orphans. These are the people who deepened and were part of the enforcers of the regime under KANU. 1992, the two, Ruto and Ringathi, and at that time there was Cyrus Jirongo, are what they formed the YK 92. And visited untold violence in that election. The same thing happened in 1997, same thing happened in 2007. Now, why am I emphasizing this background? For them to have attained what we are seeing and people look in awe is as a result of the various parties that were involved in getting to dialogue, getting to reaching a consensus, and the same were institutionalized. A system is only as strong as its checks and balances. A system is only as strong as its checks and balances. Now, these checks and balances are what hold public officials to account. Kenya is much more digitized than Uganda at 48% of the population. Uganda is only around 23% of the population.
25%.
Yeah, and you can see the message that Ruto put out. The message that Ruto put out was one that appealed to that section of the population that is digitized.
The young population.
Yeah, the young population, and it ran a smart campaign. Previously in Kenya, the campaign was wholly based on tribe, ethnicity. Now, he steered the debate and the discourse away from ethnicity and turned it into a race between, or a struggle between the haves and the have-nots. Now, as to whether or not he's a have-not, that is another issue altogether. But and you know, that is that is where the digital world is driving us.
Yeah.
That you create
A mantra.
a mantra, you create
A brand, and
and it may not be the actual, but you run on what on
a certain issue.
And that's what is done to Kenya. Now, more importantly, I've been looking at various discourses, narratives. There's one thing that has totally missed out of all this. This is the first election we're having in the region post-COVID. Now, post-COVID, COVID introduced many dynamics that many of us are unable even to respond to. We are still learning. Now, the staying away of the persons. I know in Kenya, it's permissible to mention tribes when you're discussing their politics. In Uganda, particularly young viewers might find it an abomination. But let me put it this way: the young Kikuyu really protested against the deepened state of the Mount Kenya House of Mumbi and voted with Ruto. Now, these are very critical points to chew on. And more importantly, that the democratization process in Kenya has been mainly driven by what we in Uganda call the elite. The elite are the ones who have driven the democratization process. They've owned it. They've owned it, and they've held the persons at the helm to account.
Good.
Those are the lessons I pick.
Important, very important indeed. Having laid out that history, I want to bring in Dr. Ruweza, to add on some of the history from his perspective, how he looked at it, or even, delving into the comparisons with Uganda, given the fact that you participated in that petition, and together with the Council Jude, and
As amicus.
Yes, he was an amicus. The group of 10, we had 10 of you from law school.
of Law?
Yeah.
Hirpik. Was it Hirpik?
No.
No,
Law
it was School of Law. It was School of Law at Makerere, and there were about 10 amici, and all the friends we are talking to the ordinary Ugandan, the friends of law. Of court, sorry, amicus curiae. Now, what are the comparisons that can be made and that can be picked as examples? Sarah and Edgar have referred to reforms. Kenya took deliberate steps to make reforms. Uganda, the reforms that came out of your effort, I don't know how, none was touched by the time we went into last year's election, and which still remains a sticking issue. Are there lessons that we can learn therefore?
Yes, thank you, Charles. It's interesting to note that Kenya actually did implement some of the reforms that had been recommended by their Supreme Court. And of course, this is on the backdrop of the new constitutional dispensation that you could argue they enjoy today. Although there have been attempts to change certain aspects of that constitution, the fact that they have a new constitutional dispensation which helped them recruit largely new judges, fairly independent, actually quite an independent process. And then we started seeing some jurisprudence coming in. For example, the BBI, the judgment on the Building Bridges initiative. That it shows you that for a while there were considerable attempts by the incumbent president of Kenya to change the narrative of politics in that country, trying to break the Luo-Kikuyu dichotomy. And so to an extent we could say we are not surprised that he ended up building bridges with Raila, and that also informs the kind of attitudes and specific decisions that were made in that regard. So whereas the Supreme Court, yes, did make certain recommendations, I think it's important for our viewers to understand the history, at least the near history of what has been going on. I've always argued that an election is not what happens in that week or in those few months. It's a bigger process.
Yeah.
And that is why we begin to see the analysis that Edgar is making. Why is it that the youth made a specific decision to align with largely one group? But also, why is it that many Kenyans kept away from participating in this election? I think those are questions that we could study. But back to the whole idea.
So many. In the end, there was 70.
No, from 22.1 registered voters, only 14.
Voter
Because
turnout.
nobody knows the total.
Yes.
The actual voter turnout of how many Kenyans voted.
Nobody
But
knows the total.
The chair said out of the technology there is 14 million, and then the manual voters are not mentioned. The people.
Thank you very much. And that's a very critical point. Let me let others speak, but the server president and the physical,
Please don't forget it. We will come back to it.
Yeah, so what we see when it comes to reforms is that, yes, there was a deliberate effort, and for this we applaud the Kenyans, a deliberate effort to implement those recommendations as recommended by their court. They may not have been able to do everything, but at least there was a deliberate effort to do some things. And that is why many people in Kenya and East Africa were able to follow the tallying, were able to know what is going on. Of course,
Until we got lost.
yes, until we got confused at some point, but at least you could
Digital
give,
loss, if you want to call it.
you could give credit to the fact that there were those deliberate efforts. For example, we now know that Form 34A is the breaker and maker of who becomes president, and probably, as has been argued by some, we will then see, should Raila decide to go to court, we will begin to see 34A coming up and helping the courts to make a decision, which was a deliberate effort that was recommended by the courts. And I think it is going to make this petition, if at all it comes, it will make it easier for the justices to come to a conclusion. So we see reforms, yes, not perfect, and of course for us in Uganda, lessons to learn. When we see a deliberate effort at a clean election the media is allowed, social media is not clamped down, the internet continued, everything remained largely peaceful, save for that 1 week of announcing, where I think we now need to know what exactly went wrong. And maybe the questions we need to ask: what was the mandate of the commissioners and their chairperson? Does it make any deliberate difference if some commissioners say no and others say yes? You know, maybe that would be a conversation.
Or storm out.
Yes,
at the
or storm out. That is where we probably need to ask the question: did it change anything at the end of the day?
Yeah.
But I listened to one of the professors analyze the election and said, and I think the comment they made was that there could only be one individual,
The chairperson.
the chairperson, who has the constitutional mandate to make the announcement.
Yeah.
I see that happening in Uganda as well. So the fact that there was one individual, we do not know whether in other previous elections or in elections yet to come, that in spite of the disagreements amongst the commissioners, supposing the commissioners decide to keep quiet,
What happens?
what happens?
Good.
He still remains, or she still remains with the mandate to make that vital,
To announce.
The final call.
yeah, that final call.
Okay.
Yes.
We are going to. We are definitely going to discuss that aspect as well, touching on some of them. Of course, with the risk of trying to speculate or read the mind of the court and
No,
what
but there
they.
is no petition.
No, if I was going to say if, but we will.
Yeah,
There is no
probably this is the
petition
best
yet.
time.
There is no
because-
petition yet,
Yeah,
so there
before
is
they-
no sub judice. So we shouldn't be worried.
They have 7
you can
days.
speculate.
They have 7
You can
days.
speculate within some with some evidence
Yes.
and analysis.
No,
But Jude,
Yes.
the aspect of court's decision, we now need to start coming towards that as well. In the last petition of 2007, and by the way, incidentally, it was the same month, I think it was around the 28th or 29th when that judgment was made of August. So it is just exactly 5 years this month that that ruling was given in 2017. So the issue is, what if Raila team, the Azimio, go to court? What do you think that court will be looking at, or what will the team of Raila be complaining about as far as their disagreements are concerned right now?
I think there are quite a number of issues that I see. One, this is like when you have a very close race, at least according to the final numbers, a margin of around 233,000 votes. It becomes very, very easy, even for a petitioner to satisfy what we call that so-called substantiality test. That idea that you must show that the irregularities affected the winning margin. So what Team Azimio has to do, for instance, would be to show that they probably lost around 200,000 votes, or there are over 200,000 votes which are in doubt. That is less. That's just a couple of constituencies. And I saw a paper which was circulating. I don't know that it was authored by them today, indicating a number of polling stations they are complaining about. So when you have typically a very narrow margin between two candidates, that election is really vulnerable to challenge in most cases. I've seen it even here, despite our courts being extremely mean with nullifying even parliamentary elections.
Mean?
Very mean.
I started practicing law 20 years ago. I have a difference in opinion.
Yes. When I look, for instance, at this
They're
past,
not as generous.
yeah.
At least there is evidence to show.
Yeah,
They
when
have
you
not
look
yet.
we have participated in an election petition with him, and he was successful. So I was representing the election commission. So he can't. But that's beside the point.
I think
But
what
well,
he means is that on these
a larger
others,
scale.
Yes, not even on the smaller ones, because
Yeah.
for instance, in this past cycle of parliamentary election petitions, we have just 4 petitions that succeeded. 4. This for Gogonya in Palisa, then Soroti, then one in Chisoro, and then Kasese, which one they're voting tomorrow. Just 4. And
out of how many? Were they like 200?
No, over those which went up to the Court of Appeal were over, I think, 85. So 4
but
out
initially
of
the ones
85.
that had been filed were...
At the High Court, they were over 130.
Okay.
So when you see that, and out of those 4, I was involved in 2 of those which succeeded. Like the one in Kasese, the margin between the 2 candidates was 77 votes. Yeah. So it became a little easy to be able to argue about the numbers. And that's what I see likely to happen. I'm just hoping that if there's any petition, they're not going to be raising that trivial complaint about the 0.01% that has been all over the press. I think there are very legitimate questions about the total number of voters who actually voted. The declaration that we saw, which seems to be authentic, is silent. How many invalid votes? How many votes were ultimately
Someone
cast?
was asking, is that what their law says?
They have got a decision. The Kenyan Supreme Court actually ruled that the invalid votes
must be part of
no, they don't have to be taken into account even when you're computing the percentage. So to that extent, it wouldn't be an issue. But you see, those statistics are important for a person who wants to understand the numbers.
And for accountability.
And if I'm going to make a case about the numbers and I'm challenging, my task as a petitioner is to try to put this winning margin in doubt or to erase it. If I'm going to say, look, I was cheated of 400,000 votes, maybe I may want to say there are 50,000 invalid votes, which I do not know how they arose. The invalid votes, this form 34A, which we are talking about, are the equivalent of what we call a DR form in Uganda. It has space for invalid votes.
Declaration of results form.
Yes. So that form is able to guide on how many invalid votes exist at each particular polling station. And those numbers can guide you to detect an anomaly and in tallying. So if a final declaration deliberately excludes that information, for me that is always not it's a sign of lack of transparency. And obviously it is going to raise very many questions. Then this whole issue of, I agree, the Kenyan Constitution, they are going to have a bit of a debate. Their Article 138 has 2 clauses that I think probably are going to raise a bit of debate. 138, Clause 3C, says the IEBC shall verify and tally results, shall tally and verify results. Then Clause 10 of that same article indicates that the chairperson of the IEBC shall declare. And the decision which they have, but it's not of the Kenyan Supreme Court, but of their Court of Appeal, indicated that the chairperson cannot unilaterally declare results without input of the rest of the commissioners.
That's from the Court of Appeal.
That's the BBI case.
So if
that
they chose,
was in the BBI case.
If they chose to adopt that reasoning, there could be some level of discomfort for Ruto's team because it could render the declaration
invalid,
very, very vulnerable to being invalidated.
But that is for Court of Appeal.
It's a Court of Appeal decision. So the Supreme Court,
it is not instructive to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, they may choose to say it is erroneous. They may choose to take it. And by the way, maybe some analogy for our viewers. Even here, we have had that debate about the Electoral Commission. I remember in 2016, there was a candidate from Soroti who was disqualified by the returning officer. And then that candidate appealed to the Electoral Commission. And then the then chairperson simply endorsed on his nomination paper and wrote on it that duly nominated, basically cancelled the invalidation from Soroti. And later the Court of Appeal ruled that the chairperson of the Electoral Commission could not unilaterally take such a decision, that it needed to be a decision of the chairperson and the commissioners.
With at least 3.
Yes, and they invalidated, that candidate's nomination, the Court of Appeal here. So I see it's the same reasoning. This idea of if it's the commission mentioned in the law, you have to think of the chairperson and the commissioners. But obviously, I also see a problem if results have been declared, they have been compiled. If the commissioners choose to act rogue, what should the chairperson do?
Which they did on this occasion.
That's one problem.
Which they did on this occasion.
But again, think of it the other way around. What if the chairman also decides to declare what is contrary to what has been given to him?
Yes.
And I think that's part of the debate.
Which is also
and
almost what happened.
A possibility.
So it's obviously there seems to be a bit of, I think maybe
Triable issue.
There's a bit of a lacuna. I think some sort of formula needs to be found. In Kenya, what they did in the law, which sadly I think has been messed up in these last 2 days. One, their courts declared that the results declared by the returning officer at the consequence level are final.
Yes.
They cannot be changed.
Yeah.
Now, that has also got its problem. And by the way, I made an argument here before in a parliamentary election petition over Rukunjiri woman in 2016 and successfully convinced the Court of Appeal judges. But that time my argument was the returning officer declared the results, but in the Gazette, the results were totally different from what the returning officer had declared. And the Electoral Commission argued that it had mandate to correct errors of the returning officer. But the Court of Appeal rejected the argument and said, no, what the returning officer declares is final. Now, in Kenya, their position is the same. The returning officer's declaration at a county level is final. And if that is the case, if a returning officer has forwarded results, then the job of the IEBC is simply to tally them and declare a winner.
And
verify.
So why should they go into struggling with polling stations? That's the problem that I see that causes the opaqueness that's being complained about.
Okay, the politics. Honorable Mapenduzi, forget about the legal gymnastics for now. But
He can't.
But he's a lawmaker.
yes, I'm coming, but that is not the gymnastics. I'm coming to to him based on the fact that he is a lawmaker. Some of these things that we are talking about, in fact, many of them are things that they as parliament are supposed to be doing. We don't see them doing it. We see them doing other things for now. You have watched the wonder we have referred to, that is Kenya in an election like this, with all its, Edgar has said, deliberate, purposeful decisions and intentional. Does Parliament, does government of Uganda have that intention? Do they, to ensure that, and by the way, time flies. Last year, when the results were released, it was January. Now, we are coming to 2 years, and still, as far as Parliament is concerned, we still don't know whether reforms are going to be brought to the House for discussions and making.
And maybe to add a little, the Supreme Court's recommendation was that reforms should be done in the first 2 years of Parliament.
Oh yeah, that passed.
Maybe I will interject a little bit, Charles. Just for information, some very paltry reforms were made just before the last election.
Yeah.
Some amendments were made to the Presidential Elections Act and the Parliamentary Elections Act, but they were so minor. For instance, the Supreme Court had ordered that there should be a clear legal provisions on use of technology. What was done, they simply amended the Electoral Commission Act and put a clause that the Electoral Commission may adopt technology in its work, a provision along those terms, and that was all.
Yeah, it gave the discretion.
And there were no regulations.
It gave the discretion.
Nothing of the kind.
Thank you, my brother Charles.
And who ordered for the removal of the social media? Was it Electoral Commission or UCC?
No.
There was a directive.
Yes, but let's not go into that for now.
Yes, I will just
that was part of technology in elections, but let's come to the MP.
Well, thank you, Charles, and again, greetings to the viewers. Without getting much into what the legal experts are trying to bring, Charles, there are a number of things that we can pick as a country from this, and just like we stated last week, when is the last week we talked so much about what Uganda as a country has to learn from Kenya. But I think today we can even talk more because
By last week?
Yes.
By last week's discussion, we had
yes,
not yet known. Yeah.
The situation last week was completely different. And to me, the learning has continued. Unfortunately or fortunately, the learning I have had the last few days have either undone some of the things I had or has had it a lot more to pick. But just to inform you, after being an observer in Kenya, in the Kenya election, I kept in touch with so many people, including some of the observers, those who also observers. And one very interesting thing is that today I spoke to about 4 or 5 people who were very active in the campaign processes. And hearing what the kind of comments they were giving gave me a lot of hope that one, and this is not about the politicians. I think much as things seems to have gone the way that many of us may not think the correct way, many Kenyans have tried to remain calm. And I think that is very important. They have tried to exercise that level of restraint. That gives opportunity to their country to get stronger and maybe in future do better. I spoke to one gentleman who was very much involved and, you know, and he told me in the previous elections, he was one of those who were very much involved in the chaotic things and all that. And the kind of statement he gave me today was quite, you know, interesting. He said, you know, the results have come the way it has come, but we believe in our, you know, court system. And so we will return to business and wait for what court will say. That was his opinion. I spoke to 2 other people who are not opinion. I spoke to 2 other people who are not politicians, not involved in politics. And they said, we are getting back to business. And what is left is for court to decide what is going to come on. And today I read a statement that was issued by their police boss, national police boss. And he gave a very promising statement. He said, look, appreciating Kenyans for maintaining peace during the campaigns and during the electoral processes, and he called upon people to return to business as other, you know, systems and procedures continue. That gives a big lesson to us as a country. That we need to do a lot in building the confidence of the population in our court system. But you see, it's not just all about building the confidence. It's also about the court system realizing the need to have that confidence built by doing a lot of the things that many people would expect the court system to do. And so that is one angle I see very prominently as an area Uganda has to learn. The citizens have very strong belief in their court system. And even when you read the social media, nobody's talking about whether court is going to be fair and all that. No, none of them, at least from the different interactions I have seen. So there is need for our country to build that strong kind of image that every citizen begins to look at the court as you know, the last option that would give justice to whoever is aggrieved. That is one. The second thing is just like Ladit Edgar. I'm not sure whether you understand the meaning of
Oh, I do.
Yes, thank you.
I follow some.
Thank you very much.
I speak.
Oh, yes.
I speak
yes,
his
yes.
language.
That one is a Ugandan.
Good, very good. Just like Ladit Edgar brought it, when you look at the statements, the decisions of the 4 commissioners, first, it's difficult to know who is telling the truth. and that is left for
Court.
Kenyans, and the court actually is left basically for the court to decide. The results have been announced. Whether it's not correct or correct, it is announced, and what is left is for those who are aggrieved to go to court. But as a layman, and just taking from our own practice, there are people who say, you know, the chairman of the Electoral Commission, the international, you know, I mean the electoral body, the IEBC. Some people question whether he has the power to take decisions, and I think there are two things we have to look at. One is the aspect of declaration, and I think the declaration bit is probably his ultimate responsibility. But the other part, which maybe their court will be able to pronounce itself on, is the processes that lead to the declaration. Whether, you know, the chairman has the right to determine everything and go ahead. Because if you followed clearly, you followed closely what the four commissioners say. Of course, looks like they have got a lot of information. So it's difficult to...
We shall know with time.
Yes, looks like they have got a lot of...
Not just information, relevant to determining the case,
Probably.
if it goes to court.
But I also want to assume that the chair of the electoral body also has his own information. But from the statements they have made, they've had about 2 press conferences. The first one was before declaration. Then the other one was yesterday. And yesterday they brought a lot more information, trying to give a picture of what happened, the struggles they had internally, how they disagreed. And now
Which are all still political talk.
This could be an effort to justify their walkout, or to build a case, or could even be the truth.
Good.
Now that is going to be left for the court. Now coming to the
Honorable
question.
Bapendus, there are things that happened behind the scenes.
Yes.
There
So
was-
many.
Yeah, between the within the commission, within the commissioners, and I mean we can't put them out to on a national broadcaster like this. But believe me, there was.
Yes,
There
yes.
was-
That's why I'm saying there is a possibility that so much happened, and so in an event that
You were saying something. You were saying something that the final one. The other thing you said something like
do
the
you want
other
me
thing.
do you want me to conclude?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Then I'll say the final one. I'll say the final one.
Yes.
The final one is coming to how you started. Looks like you said there are things we are not doing. As
Parliament,
as Parliament.
as the legislature.
I wish you could be very specific on some of those things. Of course, I know that after the 2016 elections, there were lots of recommendations that...
Were they 8? Or major 13?
Broadly, they were 8.
They were broadly 8, yes.
Yes, and to just tell you frankly, from my experience in Kenya as an observer, I think the Kenya situation was different. Looks like they learned so much from the 2007 to 8 experience and 2017 experience. So they learned so much and they did a lot of improvement. And indeed, those improvements gave the kind of image many of us saw before the declaration. So, and you know, from after declaration, that's where we are getting all this. But before, I think Kenya demonstrated how a country can learn from their own experiences and do things that would turn around the story. Now, how this other, you know, the declaration bit happened, well, we will leave that and again continue with the learning. So, as Uganda, I am not afraid to say that in most times I think, by the way, even in Parliament, we have for some of us who lead committees, we have asked many questions whether recommendations that committees of Parliament give get implemented. And so this is not just only the recommendations from court. I think there is a problem in this country, how we take feedbacks, how we take recommendations, how we want to change things, and sometimes we are stuck to our old system. Of course, it's understandable because sometimes when we let it be like that, it favors some people. So maybe we refuse to create those improvements, to create an environment that favors us. But I think if we care much, we should be able to learn And these recommendations are useful because it creates a much safer environment for the country. So Kenya's done fairly well, and we need to learn from that.
Okay, I don't know who I should give this to. Maybe let me give it to Sarah, who is the activist, because the rest of you who go to court a lot may be uncomfortable with this question. The issue of the matters now have, focus now is transferring to, is she called Martha Karambu, Chief Justice?
Kome.
Yes, Kome, Martha Kome.
Chief Justice.
Chief Justice. And like Honorable Mapenduzi says, the Kenyans are now saying, let's look up to the courts and believe and trust, have confidence that they will deliver justly and fairly. Is there something we can learn from that, both from 2017 and now, as it is, as the matter is now transferred to the mediator, in this case, the court, that in our case, by now people would be saying, now forget it. You have not won, now that was the end. Sarah, if the rest of the lawyers want to respond, they will, but I'm sure they will be very uncomfortable with doing that. Edgar, why are you looking at me like that?
No, we wondering why.
They will come in.
No, we have confidence in our courts.
No, you have, of course.
Yes.
But I'm saying, can you say the contrary? That is what I'm asking, I'm doubting. But let Sarah start.
You know, just we have to credit Kenya to a bigger extent because they have independence of democratic institutions. If you look at the manner of appointment of judges, which is even public, you know, they go through public scrutiny.
In the scrutiny.
You go to the appointment of commissioners of IEBC. You know, they have built, to some extent, a system with a level of robustness to be able to protect democracy to some extent. And the 2017 decision entrenched some of these checks and balances. So if you look at even the conduct of
but also the politicians, you remember the comments of the Honorable Uhuru?
Yes, no, it is threefold.
And the comments of Ruto, the deputy?
It is threefold, Charles. So the first level is independent systems, institutions that are able to check and protect the rights of the people, as well as safeguard democracy to some extent. The second aspect is the active participation of the people. The level of active citizenry in Kenya is a bit higher.
Civic competence.
Yes.
Civic competence.
Yes.
I always emphasize that.
Is higher than really what we have here.
Much higher in the region.
The third issue is the participation of the elite. I want to underscore the fact that as we were observing elections, the DPP's office had also observer badges, and we met in the field. The Human Rights Commission, the government institution, had observer badges. So we asked them, what are you doing? The Law Council, the Law Society of Kenya. Those three institutions had to observe elections. So we asked them, what are you doing in the field? So, like the two government bodies, they said, no, we must see what is happening. And be able to, because these issues will come to us to deal with. And the same was Kenya Law Society, all of them were in the field observing elections. The participation of private sector, unprecedented. So if you look at these, the institutions, the civic agencies, the civic competence, and the independence of the institutions. So they are able to act and check excesses at several levels. So that's why when it comes to Kenya, the trust they have with the courts, they've seen it. In 2017, they saw a transparent process where courts overturned an election.
What was the situation previously?
No, I'm coming. Of course, we said they've built, and you brought to that point clearly. Democracy is a process.
Exactly.
Elections are a process.
Yes.
So they've gone through the stages, and we are discussing the current status. So if you look at what happened in the 2017 presidential election, even where the margin was not as small as this one, the issues that the courts raised have largely guided the manner of conducting this election. The forms we are talking about, the online portal, the media transparency, the civic agencies, all were decisions of court that they emphasized must happen. So when people say we trust what court will decide, they have a precedent to base on. And I believe they trust the courts, unlike our situation here.
Okay, Sarah says unlike our situation. Edgar, you said we trust. You want to justify that?
To some extent.
To the extent, and also touch on the extent to which that trust is held.
You know, a lot of events turn on information that's not available to the public. What we are seeing playing out in Kenya, I'll re-emphasize it, is not accidental.
Can I just stop you at that point? It's not accidental. We will come back to start from there.
Much obliged.
I want us to take a break right now, and I have instructions from my commercial manager that I'm now supposed to pay for the bills. And so let's take a break right now. We will come back after the break. This is Behind the Headline.
I'll restrain myself, but there are things
Agreed.
Simba! Ni MTN Kabode Super as you pay mpola for this smartphone. Make calls, update your WhatsApp status, watch YouTube, and Google anything under the sun with 2 GB worth of data every month for 7 months. Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly, or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN Kabode Super easy.
Oh, Susan, I want to propose to Rose. Yes, and this time I am serious.
Have you guys had sex?
Duh, of course.
And have you had sex without using condoms?
Hey, Nga, you're curious.
I'm more concerned. Are you having sex with other people?
Hey, hello, is this an interview or what?
No, just things you should think about. Do you know Rose's HIV status?
Okay, this is serious. Should I be worried?
It is actually serious. Do you know your HIV status?
I think I am safe. Many times we get into situations that put us at risk of HIV. However, the first step to ending HIV is getting tested and knowing your results.
It's Time Up HIV. Call 0800-211-046 or text 8080 toll-free for more information about how to prevent HIV.
This message is brought to you by Ministry of Health with support from USAID.
Enjoy more GBs for the same price on Airtel. Shareable using 2 Gabonais. We have increased GBs across all your favorite packs. Now, 4 GB is at 10,000 shillings and 10.5 GB at 22,500 shillings, all valid for a week. For the heavy data users, enjoy 24 GB at 50,000 shillings and 50 GB at 100,000 shillings, all valid for a month. Dial *175# or use the My Airtel app to buy these and more affordable weekly and monthly data bundles on Airtel, the smartphone network.
Do you need data collection services, data analysis and reporting, monitoring and evaluation systems? Then contact Mold Technologies, a professional research firm that has provided many organizations with timely research solutions for over 15 years. For more information, visit www.mt.co.ug or call us on 0704 913 399 or 0782 602 963. Visit our office in Kampala at Sayuni Complex in Tinda. Mood Technologies, your professional research firm.
Meet Professor Petero. He knows something every hustler in UG is gonna love.
Oh, see. You say I was just trying to get the documents to register for Airtel Money.
You don't need the documents. You just decided to register.
What's going on here? He sells things from the shop, and behind my back, he gets the money and gives it to his girlfriends.
But just get Airtel Money Pay so that all money comes direct to your business wallet, and only you, the owner, have access to it.
Just dial *185 *10 #, and now you are on. No waiting.
Huh? This insanity is sweet. Give them also.
I only take Airtel Money Pay. It's easy and secure.
Yes, become a safer and more efficient cash-free business today. Easy. Not mixing your business money with your Kameza money. No, that's efficient. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Cooking with electricity is now affordable. Cook your beans. Avoid smoke.
Sayaka. Cooking with electricity is now so affordable with the Fumba tariff set by the Electricity Regulatory Authority. With the Fumba tariff, you can now buy up to 70 units of Yaka at a reduced price of 412 Uganda shillings per unit after consuming your first 80 units of the month. For more information, contact the Electricity Regulatory Authority on 0200 506 000.
Vimba! Ni MTN Kabode Super as you pay mpola for this smartphone. Make calls, update your WhatsApp status, watch YouTube, and Google anything under the sun with 2 GB worth of data every month for 7 months. Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly, or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN Kabode Super easy.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 17th of August 2022, and we are here discussing the lessons learned or lessons to be learned from the just concluded Kenyan elections. And as I said earlier, those elections, the results were announced on Monday, and now the discussion is on whether or not the matter or the disagreement will reach court, the Supreme Court. We have in the studio Counsel Edgar, we have Counsel Dr. Rueza, we have Jude, we have Honorable Mapenduzi and Sarah Birete looking at taking a look at those issues. Before we went for a break, I had to cut short Edgar, who was as the moderator, you know, who was taking to the floor to submit on the matters that were flowing. Edgar, go for it. You had said it's not accidental, right?
Yeah.
You started at that.
Yeah, it's not accidental that Kenya is where it is now. And I added that there are many events in this world that turn on information that's not available to the public. Now, there were many behind the scenes, I don't want to use the word maneuvers, but processes to define whatever was happening. In particular, the one thing that really played out was that there was an attempt to hack. There were many attempts to hack into the process because, and that's where my sister Sarah is basing her prediction on how the courts will turn. Because what was eventually announced was the physical tallying as opposed to the virtual tallying. I've mentioned it elsewhere that that in the era of the four IRs, fourth industrial revolution, there is that process that is defining how the world is managed, how the world is governed. The interaction between quantum physics, which is the physical world, matter in the physical world. There is big data, which is the virtual world, and there is robotics, or artificial intelligence. Now, the interaction between the three is what produces, is what people use, or what marketing companies use for direct sales, and even influence the way you perceive commodities, goods, and services. You know, it has ever occurred to you that we're talking about something here, and your digital gadget is on. And when you open it, the first thing that hits you is the very commodity that you might have mouthed off in a discussion. Now, that is the physical world relating with what? The virtual world. In my opinion, I saw an attempt to drive a result that was based on what the server would have generated. And I think when, and from the statement Wafula Chebukati gave,
the chairperson
of the Electoral Commission, he actually alluded to that. And this is a national broadcaster, and we are talking about a neighboring state, a very critical state.
No, it's important. As long as you provide evidence, it's okay. I am backed by the law.
The law.
The UCC Act will be on my case. So.
And definitely, I mean, the dissenting commissioners, their walking out was certainly a matter of deep sentiment. It's we are not even talking about roles. You know, mind you, when you're occupying such a position, you are expected to act with a sense of proportion. Kenya has had a checkered past in as far as it manages its elections. Now, there is a moment, the intensity of the moment that you have before you to call an election and announce the winner. And at that point, you walk out. Now, frankly, I thought that was inappropriate for a person in such a position. We had it here in Uganda, 1996 elections. Late Charles Odongotho. You remember Charles Odongotho?
Yes.
The electoral commissioner. He had represented, he was in the CA, then nominated. He died in a road accident in Nairobi. Charles Odongotho disagreed with the position of the rest of the electoral commission, and he wrote a minority report. That's what you'd expect. That's the level of maturity.
In this case, it would be a majority, because it's 4 versus 3.
So much the better, so much the better. But, you know, storming out, storming out of an announcement of such a critical process, I think, in my opinion, was. Now, there were behind the scenes things that I think we can pick lessons from. The channels of communication were kept open between the protagonists. President Jakaya Kikwete, Mrisho Kikwete, did shuttle diplomacy between all these pundits, between all these protagonists. And the message was very clear. Kenya is above all of them.
And President Koroma, the head of AU.
Of AU, yes. And the statements that they're going to put there should be coordinated, and they should exercise restraint. Now, I've seen that missing in other East African states. Whenever there's an election, it's a matter of life and death.
Zero sum.
So and I'm afraid in Uganda, the further we go in our processes, the extremists are taking charge on either side of the divide. And the moderate voices, the sober voices, are being drowned. Now, persons of our kind of persuasion, whatever side of the divide we belong to, we've left it to the extremists to take charge. And I think, you know, as far as Kenya is concerned, remember for Raila, this was Kipindi cha Lala Salama. It's either now
or never.
Well, maybe there are arguments that there'll be questions. Can an 82-year-old contest for elections? Mr. Odongotho, can an 82-year-old contest for presidential elections?
Of course.
Here, I asked the question, and you are supposed to provide the answers.
Much obliged, but
so you cannot reverse the roles.
So people are saying that, you know, so this was a very critical election for Raila. And remember, I did introduce at the beginning that we can talk about people's tribes in Kenya freely, because that's how they've elected.
No, Kenyans are very free with that.
Very free. So for the Luos, this was a very critical election. Now or never, because I mean,
they've always been critical elections for them. I don't think there's been a time
for the candidate.
And indeed, he's introduced an aspect that I was going to address next. Even Raila made it very clear that this is the first time the deep state is allied to what? You know the concept of the deep state?
The system.
Well,
Ruto said this thing you're saying, the deep state system, then he said, no, it will not.
It will not what? Ruto.
But wasn't Ruto deep state?
You see, that's the question, which there's the deep state and the deeper state.
He was talking about. It goes back to what he was talking about earlier, that you can brand yourself as an outsider.
As an outsider.
Even when you are inside.
And successfully turned.
It appears from the results and the way, now let me say, the maneuvers that went on and eventually who ran away with the result of the maneuvers, that he actually ran away with the deep state.
With the deep state, exactly. And you see, mind you, Chibukati is ODM from Bugoma. Chibukati is seen as ODM. These other dissenting commissioners were appointed a year ago.
Yeah.
And they were seen to be an appendage of the deep state. I'm really trying to be careful, the message I put out here, because I said this is a national broadcast and we should, these are states that have to relate. So,
no, but you're not talking about states, you're talking about individuals.
Yes.
I think there should be
a distinction.
You see, he's an academic.
Maybe he should
he has the liberty. I've taken the role of a diplomat and I have to be very... but in other words, what I'm trying to put to you...
In the Great Lakes.
What I'm trying to put to you, there's a lot that I'm saying but not saying, and I hope our viewers are able to...
No, you will have to say them. If you don't say them...
but critically, channels of communication
were kept open. Which is most important.
And that is very critical for a process.
But how open were they, Edgar, when principles of Azimio coalition were blocked from accessing Bomas?
You see, behind the scenes, communication is behind the scenes.
What I know for a fact is that by Wednesday, I think Wednesday.
Thursday.
Was it Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
I knew from my sources within the Observer team and also within Bomas that Kikwete was doing that shadow diplomacy. I think on Wednesday he met Ruto, but the information that he was meeting Raila came on Thursday. But by then he had met both sides, you know. He had already met both sides.
By Sunday, when Raila and Martha Karua went to attend church service, from their body language it was very clear they had considered.
No.
I'm saying from body language. The non-verbal communication.
Now that is debatable.
The non-verbal communication.
Because were you aware of the kind of church service they were attending? What if it was a memorial?
It was Africa, England.
Where you are not necessarily supposed to be smiling.
But
can I say this? Just in 1 or 2 minutes. Two things. The diplomat is the last statement you made. I'm not going to comment on that, but I just want to touch on two things. One, the walking out, the four commissioners, the commissioners walking out. I think it's again something we need to learn, and to me, it's a positive development that we can learn from.
Okay.
That even when there are institutions and there are disagreements, people should be free to express their opinion. And I don't think it's wrong for the commissioners to walk out,
storm out.
Let me mention this. Whether storming, you know, diplomat. This is
whether storming or whether walking out,
or you know, from jumping out. As long as the intention is to demonstrate their dissatisfaction with a certain process, I think it should be welcome. Whether they have got deep sentiment and all that, the message is clear that they walk out to demonstrate how dissatisfied they are. What is left is now to find out whether indeed their walking out is coming from a genuine point of view
or a publicity stunt.
So it's not going to be right to hurry to judge, and that's why I say it. Maybe we need to wait and learn from what will come out in an event that one side decides to go to court. So that is one. And I'm not going to say they were wrong to do that.
Two.
Personally, when I don't agree with a decision and I see that my views are not being accommodated, I am free to say, well,
let me leave you in peace.
Not to associate myself with this, go ahead and do it, I'm out of it.
Okay. And number two, the other thing.
That is one. Number two, the question of whether this election was a do or die for some group or not, I think both Raila, Right Honorable Raila and His Excellency Ruto, the two gentlemen have given a lot that we can learn from as Uganda, as East Africa. Look at Ruto, look at his background, where he comes from.
Hustler.
Exactly. I followed a video clip when he gave a long story about himself.
Yes.
And that is very inspiring. It's motivating, right? And how he talks about his personal efforts, how he talked about his businesses, how he talked about his struggle in the political, environment, and it's something that inspires many. But also look at Raila on the other side. This is someone who has been struggling throughout. And I think even after, losing for several times, losing and going to court and that, and he has not given up. And so, even when he decides to retire, I think Kenyans will have a lot to say about how much he has contributed. So, leaving alone the result and whatever has come out, I think the two gentlemen have played a big role in shaping the politics of Kenya, which will, it's something that will remain stuck in their history.
Good. So, let me say two things, Charles.
Yeah, and just to conclude, I like the message that Right Honorable Raila gave. Because even...
What was the message?
You know, Charles, let me tell you this. I'm into politics.
Yeah.
Being defeated 4 times, and every time running to court, and respecting the decision of court, but still going back to the same court. I think it's a big message. And that's something we also have to learn in Uganda.
No, in Kenya they don't have bushes.
No, let me say this. Well, of
maybe
course...
you should direct it to the person who doesn't take...
let me just say this.
Please do.
Who doesn't take the loss in court?
I'm not saying people should not condemn if court is not being fair. My message here is that I think from what the two gentlemen and other candidates are trying to do in respecting the court system and continuously still going to the same court, irrespective of what comes out, is a big learning point for Uganda.
True.
That individually, as leaders, we also have a role to play in building the court system. By how we look at it, because the moment...
By testing it?
Well, we can test, the court may have weaknesses, but still, it's our own country.
Well said, well said.
Dr. Reza. Maybe I should pick up on that, and I wanted to go back to the question you asked Sarah that you wanted us to respond to. I think
also the question of the walking out of the commissioners. You are the itched to comment on it.
Yes. So with the court system, I think it's important for us to understand that the court system, or the courts, are institutions.
Yeah.
And the fact that...
Institutions of a democratic system.
Yes, and the fact that people can go back to the courts again and again is a belief in a court system, in an institution that can provide a certain form of relief, all right, to those individuals. And which I think should be applauded because, at least for Kenya now, we know that it's not yet over until, until the courts have decided,
until it's over.
And the beautiful thing about that is that even after the announcement has been made, the declaration of who, in the opinion of the IEBC chairperson, has won, well, not opinion, but according to his tallying, we know that there is a court system that an aggrieved party is able to go back to, and that is expected. And you could see in social media, they were saying now it's the time for the Amisai, the Mutatis Mutandis, and so on and so forth. And I think that is good to hear those views coming through.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the fact that the Kenyan populace already have this belief that they've already gone through the process of electing, choosing, maybe not electing, but choosing judicial officers who they believe are able to deliver a certain result. And I think that is good, that, you know, whatever result is going to come, we've seen what they've done with BBI and the other judgments. We know that whatever judgment comes out will be good. So now going back to the...
Will be good.
Whatever
judgment comes out
will be good for Kenya.
Will be good for Kenya.
It may not be good for individuals.
They do not have to go to a bush or things like that.
It will be acceptable.
Yes. Now, and for me, the question, but I thought you wanted to remain a diplomat.
That's the reminder.
Now, and for me, I'm fortified in the belief that we are now going to have, hopefully, should we go to court, should they go to court, we shall have at least, hopefully, a comment, be it in obiter dicta, that what do you do when you are the IEBC and you don't agree?
You know, my worry.
You know, I would hope that the court will be able to.
You know, when I sit here to pilot the show, to moderate, I'm worried about the viewer getting your information very well.
Yes.
That you are communicating.
Yes.
But also that you are communicating to them.
Yes.
Now, when you say obiter dicta, please tell the...
Okay. You should have just told me to respond to that. What I mean is that I'm hoping that the courts will take the extra step of ensuring that it guides on what happens when the IEBC is not in cohesion.
Agreement, fully.
When commissioners come out.
When commissioners come out and so on and so forth. I think it will be very good. But it also now gives a good lesson for Uganda. Because you see, for a while, Ugandans have been saying that they need to be able to participate in choosing who the members of their equivalent of the Kenyan IEBC are. And that they're saying, you know, this political party should be able to front a candidate and so on and so forth. Now we need to go a step further in light of what has happened in Kenya to say that, yes, whereas that could be considered one day, if at all the powers that be do allow, we now need to ask the question that does the IEBC operate as cabinet operates, whereby there is collective responsibility, or do individual members decide to do as they so please? I think for us in Uganda and for our Honorable Mapenduzi and his colleagues should now be able to go back and say, should such an occurrence ever happen, then we should expect the commissioners to behave in a certain way. Either the chairperson has the final say, or we know that everybody, it's free for all, it's a www wide west scenario. I think the Kenyan scenario teaches us
majority to take a decision, a final decision.
Yes. And in any case, should it even be about democracy of the commission, or should this be just maidens or midwives of the process that has so painstakingly occurred, that all they do is agree on what has been presented, and they present it to us saying, we've collected this information, these are the votes that have been cast, and we hereby present them to you.
In your estimation, from a legal perspective, and looking at it really at a basic level, first, there is the rationale that there are 7 commissioners, an even number. Let's start from that. In your view, why was that made? Whether it is implied and not expressed. Why is it made an odd number? 2, why were the others appointed to be together with the chairperson? If the law really deems that it must be the chairperson to take the decision which is final, why are there others? Is that something you can discuss?
I think
I thought briefly before Daniel comes in, I thought the chairperson announces, makes a declaration.
Yes.
But there is nowhere where it says he takes a decision alone. The verification
No, actually,
is
the
by
regulations.
commission.
Yes. The regulations, I think, which I looked at, which govern the IEBC, there's a specific regulation which talks about decision making being by majority vote.
Yeah.
However, I think the main challenge
some lawyer said, we were reading, I think, with Edgar, some lawyer said that is for administrative purposes.
Yes, and I think it's
no, it was not a lawyer, it was a law student.
But I think
to school us on the
that man was a law student.
Yeah.
He spoke so authoritatively.
Yeah,
That's a good student.
But in all fairness,
will tell you tell us that's a good student.
In all fairness, I think there is a good argument to be made regarding this particular tallying of results. Does it mean after they have tallied, these 7 people need to sit down and again vote?
No, but at
you
what
see,
point
it's, I think it's not.
Did they disagree? Jude, I think it's important. Sorry. At what point did the commissioners disagree?
Yes.
Because if you look at events before they addressed media at Serena,
They were
because before that we didn't know they had dissented.
Exactly.
But before that, Azimio agents said they cannot sign because they have not seen results. So you have a build-up to that. I don't think they disagreed as to who should announce. They must have disagreed on the verification, which they call opaque.
Basically, they disagreed with the process.
Yeah.
And
the information,
we can only
the information behind the
speculate
scenes
at
is
this
very
point.
different from what is being
We can
said.
only speculate at this point regarding what exactly happens.
No,
the
but
Evidence Act is
Chibukati
very
gave
clear.
Chibukati,
If I may, Edgar, the Evidence Act is very clear, at least in Uganda, on who alleges must prove. So therefore, we should expect that should this process take us somewhere, then we should see a deliberate effort by the 4 to explain and prove why they were caused to do what they did. But that does not take away from the fact that we need now to pick a lesson. And you see, the question you've asked, Charles, is a very good question, because we probably assumed, at least some of us would have assumed, that where it's an odd number, then it's about democracy. But as long as that lacuna, that undecided, that unclarity remains, we then need to be able to specify, because the law always plays catch up. So in that maze of uncertainty, I think for us as Uganda, therefore, we need to be able to say, let's be clear that when the commissioners are 7, or when the commissioners are making their decision, the decisions are either only administrative, or they also include, when it comes to the announcement of the vote, and the chairperson only plays a ceremonial role, but the actual debates do actually happen, if at all they do. It seems that is an area we had never explored, and Kenya has given us an opportunity, at least for Uganda and other nations, to be able to make some kind of clarity.
Okay. Charles, just a quick one. Are we going to have, in the likely event that we have a petition before the courts, so it will be the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga against Dr.
against
Electoral Commission and Dr.
Now, with the Electoral Commission,
that's
in the last one, the petitioner, I mean, the president-elect was the third.
Yes.
Was the third accused.
Okay, now in this case, they responded. In this case, the Electoral Commission, there's no unanimity in the Electoral Commission. So are they going to go against each of the Electoral Commissioners? Because
I think it's
that's a very critical one, because they are disagreed. As of now, we are talking of a decision from the look of things. We are talking of a decision of Chibukati, not the Electoral Commission. And we have the other 4 dissenters, led by the vice chairperson.
That's another important one we need to find out.
Yes, I think it's at some level it becomes, I think, a question of evidence and what the 4 commissioners choose to do.
Yes. So they'll file separate.
We may be very expectant that they will make some input if a petition is filed, but again they may choose not to do so to the disappointment of many, because you know. Technically, are they going to be adverse parties against their employer, the IEBC? Yes. It's a bit of a complication.
Can they be
or maybe is a strategic lawyer going to ask the court to summon them to come and explain.
They will appear as witnesses.
In which case, there's a very big possibility of a rerun.
And
Now,
you see,
also that question, that closer to that question,
before you ask that
some people
question,
came
Charles,
up and said, these guys, since they are the majority as commissioners, they should actually announce the winner themselves. That
That's why the law gazette suit to announce.
The law specifically says who the returning officer is, who announces. Maybe what I wanted to say earlier regarding this whole issue of the courts.
Maybe, Jude, before you go there, just a comment that we probably need to know, as happens with the case, we had litigation regarding the Inspectorate of Government. And there was this clear clarification given by the court.
It was not fully constituted.
That it's not fully constituted, yes, because they don't have.
That was the case of Luchamuzi?
No, some case.
Yes.
The election petition arising.
Luchamuzi was on the
arising from the anti-corruption court.
Yes. So maybe we
on
need
the issue of bail and
so we need to ask the question: who constitutes the IEBC?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it all the members together? Is it one individual? Is it the secretariat? And maybe that would give some clarity to answer Edgar's question. Should someone decide to go to court and sue the IEBC? Are we suing individuals? Is the full? Will the 4 be added to the 3 in order to constitute?
So it turns out that the process may not be so much questioned, but the end result of it.
Yes.
The end of pipe process, not what was
not the pathway.
Not the path, but the end of pipe process.
When you look at what I told you earlier, the IEBC is not different from our electoral commission.
No.
Even actually,
just in name.
Even our law clearly says you have a chairperson and commissioners.
Yes.
And even our courts here, we have had that dispute of can the chairperson unilaterally take a decision? And the Court of Appeal disagreed with that approach. I gave you an indication. It was a petition involving a candidate from Soroti. Who had been disqualified at the district level by the returning officer. And then Engineer Badru Chigundu overruled the returning officer and reversed alone. And later on the courts disagreed and said that was not a right decision because the text of the law, the Electoral Commission Act, says you lodge a complaint to the Electoral Commission and the Electoral Commission decides the complaint. So what that means is, who is the Electoral Commission? The Electoral Commission is a corporate body who constitutes it, the chairperson and the commissioners. Now, when you go to Kenya, it's the same thing. The Article 138 I was alluding to, it talks about, on one hand, that the IEBC will basically process the results from the returning officers. Then a separate clause now indicates that the chairperson of the IEBC will declare. So I think ultimately there's going to be a need to harmonize those two and then say how does this actually work? Can the chairperson, because he has the powers to announce, disregard input of the others or not? And how is their input made? Must it be to a vote or not? So there is that kind of question. Now, turning to the whole issue here of the courts, we are talking about the Kenyan courts and how they seem to inspire confidence of, I think, the population and the political players. And what lessons can our own courts draw here? Obviously, I think we still have quite a bit of work and processes to go through. Our appointments of the judiciary themselves still have a lot of debate. From the Judicial Service Commission itself, there are still a few steps I think could be good if they were made. I don't know why they do not want to open up the process to the public to know. I should be able to know that the Judicial Service Commission is considering Edgar for the Supreme Court, judge of the Supreme Court.
God forbid.
So that at that point, the public will be able to make
take the name of the Lord in vain.
But now, but now the challenge is what we have is we simply hear.
Yes.
We simply get here in the news that so and so has been recommended for appointment and is going to Parliament.
We even
And
have
before we know it,
acting
we don't even
judges.
know when they have gone to Parliament. We simply, the next thing is we see them in the State House swearing in.
No, but we see the invitation on social media.
So already that process is a bit opaque, and that process itself
is also opaque.
Does not inspire confidence.
Opaqueness.
Yeah, and now when it comes to the vote,
what are the major debates in Kenya are 0.01 and opaqueness.
Now,
and whether it was walking out or storming out is going to be another one added.
When it comes to our courts now, how do they handle cases which involve some measure of a political contest?
Yeah.
I think we have had a lot of tests, and sadly, the courts have really not performed them well. At the level of the Constitutional Court, we have had several controversial petitions lodged. And sometimes actually the petitions go stale from the Constitutional Court. They are never heard. And by the time a petition is heard, people have lost interest. You realize that
all the matters
there have been improvements.
Yes, there are some
of more judges.
there are some improvements, but still you see there's a bit of a tendency. You'll see there are several petitions which should be important. People filed petitions.
Like which one?
Regarding questions of whether a serving army officer can be appointed to cabinet.
That's the case that was before even the...
And there were two different petitions. One
Law
petition...
Society?
No. They were actually filed by private individuals. And I thought that was actually a weighty point that surely required to be determined one way or the other and closed.
But there were others in there. There was backlog to deal with. Yeah. First in, first out.
There is backlog to deal with.
But the question is going to be... Yeah, you see there are two areas.
I think there are some facts we ought to bring to the attention of the
Certificate of urgency.
No. First in, no.
Yes,
There's a queue.
Edgar's point is true, that the courts may have backlog.
Yeah.
But again, there are particular... There's litigation which is important.
So you're saying one is more important than the other?
Yes,
Judge, the Constitution.
Maybe I should say that the advantage in Kenya is that Kenya has got a court of appeal in different regions. And as a result, they are able to handle more cases. And maybe what we need to do here in Uganda is maybe through the Uganda Law Society advocate for that kind of situation.
Increase funding to the judiciary.
Yes.
There's every
and have
of the
more judges.
Increase funding to the judiciary.
To be able to,
and you see them.
And I know that.
Just hold on a bit.
Yes.
Let's first listen to Dr.
Dr.
Rueza.
Okay. I was just saying that to quell Jude's concerns, that probably what we need to do is to advocate as Uganda Law Society or maybe other institutions that let's have circuit courts. I know that there are, at least in Kenya, I know Mombasa has got its own court of appeal, Kisumu and so on. And so it's easy for you to have those matters dispensed at that level. You know, it helps a lot. And I just don't know. I know that before Parliament, a request had been made that when prospective candidates are brought before the committee, it should be a public hearing. I don't know whether the same has been done before the Judicial Service Commission.
But even in Parliament,
it's not done.
Nothing at all. Even in Parliament, they didn't accept it.
But I think in Parliament a request was made.
A request has been made.
Yes, it has not yet succeeded.
I think they are trying to consider whether it is okay.
Yes.
But there have been issues with, one, there is also for members of parliament themselves. Members of parliament themselves have been asking that when for example, on vetting,
yes,
that why don't we discuss it? Why is the report not brought to the whole house? Even that has been a complaint.
Let me just say this. Just very briefly. Picking from what he said, I think the last few months, I think there's been a lot of activities within the judiciary. There's been a lot of leave alone the processes. I think there's been a lot of effort made by the judiciary.
To appoint more officers.
To appoint more
judicial
officers.
And particularly the lower courts.
Yes.
We are now having counties, having
yes,
magistrates.
actually we, in one of the meetings where I think the Chief Justice was talking to leaders and all that, he gave a picture of what the judiciary is trying to do, and it gives a lot of hope. Having, you know, grade 1 magistrates,
yes,
at county level,
sub-county, I think.
County,
at county level, yes,
exactly. And they've done a lot of deployment. So that is a good,
like
good step.
Soro district has 3 magistrates.
And also I have
remote
now,
areas,
yes,
Ruvuguri and Uchimbiri and
yes, and also now the effort of taking court of appeals to, I think they are building in Gulu and Mbarara are in the first phase and moving out to other regions.
There are improvements.
So generally there are improvement and we have to applaud that. We have to really commend that. But still we need to do more. So I just wanted to add to what he was saying.
Give them more funds.
Yes,
and
I don't know
we
that
are trying our best.
However,
as Parliament, we are trying
yes,
our best.
I think for sure the judiciary has received quite a generous appropriation in the last 2-3 years,
Yes.
and it shouldn't be an issue now. But I think what's important, the judiciary needs to recognize that for it to inspire confidence from the population, they need to do more. Disputes must be decided one as soon as possible. Kenyan courts have processed so many disputes, even regarding the nomination processes. But here we still have a bit of confusion. People get
not confusion, inertia. Let's use the word inertia.
Yes, I recall at some point I represented a lady who was unfairly disqualified by a court which had no jurisdiction, which had no powers really, in 2019, just before the elections, 2020, before the election. And I appealed to the Court of Appeal. I pleaded with the judges to give the lady her day in court. Eventually, after I think 3 months, still it was a bit of record time of me protesting. They hear her appeal. And it was for me a very straightforward, simple appeal. I wanted her to be cleared so she could go and contest. And they delivered the judgment 5 months later, agreeing with me that she had been unfairly disqualified.
Yeah. But time had passed.
But time had passed. It was meaningless. Her opponent was unopposed. You see, there are those sorts of gaps. Right now, another example, we have finished this phase of election appeals from the High Court to the Court of Appeal on parliamentary election matters and local government. Something new, which is interesting, the Court of Appeal ordered around 15 retrials. Around 15 cases are supposed to go back to the High Court for retrial. Most of those orders were made in June. We are now in August, and there's no indication whether those retrials are going to happen soon. That's something which can raise concern. Then there was a very funny scenario. In 2016, the High Court, sitting, I think, in Paris, no, sitting in Mbale, nullified an election of a member of parliament. That member of parliament appealed to the Court of Appeal. The law provides that once you appeal, you stay in your seat until your appeal is heard.
The status quo remains.
The appeal was never heard, and this gentleman served his term of office and completed it.
And then later on came.
But that became notorious from, you remember, what was his name, Reverend Bakaluba?
Peter Bakaluba.
Yes.
Bakaluba,
well,
that is when it really started.
Yes, but
but for him, at least the problem was people used to appeal up to Supreme Court. So it was understandable. There were two appeals.
The challenge of his qualifications was never concluded.
Actually, it was concluded.
So I think
after he had finished his term.
There are areas in which the judiciary can also inspire confidence by treating these election disputes with the respect they deserve.
Yeah. But I thought that, is it the regulations of court that prioritize election petitions?
It's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's not just a regulation.
Yeah.
It's in the Constitution that election matters take precedence.
And when you bring this to the attention of the administrators, they take action, frankly. You know, and I've had delays.
Do
in
they
courts.
need a reminder? Because it is in the constitution, it is in the parliamentary regulations that there must be an election tribunal to discharge these cases.
You know, and we have moved, now we're again moving away from that system of physical filing. There's a pilot scheme that is ongoing for digitalization.
Which is not very popular with lawyers.
Of course, you know, we are conservative.
Most of them,
there's resistance.
Most of the ones
and by the way,
never met a laptop.
Many of many of these
when
delays,
you visit
Charles,
the
I would like
fora,
to inform the viewers, but many of these delays are actually caused by the bar. Now, you can imagine you have filed a petition and you don't make a complaint.
By the lawyers,
to
say by the lawyers.
Okay, by the lawyers.
Yeah.
You've filed a petition and the matter is taken so long without taking off. You write to the principal judge if it's in the High Court. If it's the Court of Appeal, you write to the DCJ. In all matters, you write to the Chief Justice, who can, he has the power under the Constitution to give administrative directions, if need be, deploy a judge to hear the matter expeditiously. Frankly, I think on this issue, it was incompetence on
good information. I want to, Dr. Weza, just want 10 seconds, because I don't want us to get
carried away.
And you lawyers, once you get carried away into your
certainly
things, you are now
certainly. But to be fair,
we have to go back lessons from Kenya. But to be fair to the lawyers, I belong to some of the WhatsApp groups that are specific to
practice groups.
Court of Appeal, Civil Division, Commercial Division. And there have been genuine concerns about the efficacy of ECMIS. It's a good system, I agree, but the lawyers will tell you, and actually if we do a research on it, you'll see that I think there is something that is just not working. Because some of the comments are that, yes, I have lodged through ECMIS, but I have to physically continue visiting the court until I get a day. So I think we have to be fair to our colleagues. I think some of them genuinely have done the right thing, and there are some. I think one of my colleagues, one of my classmates is planning to file a case
to challenge
via ECMIS.
Yeah, because he's saying that ECMIS is just not working and is delaying justice.
So he files a case. So he files a case questioning its illegality. Questioning what?
That's why I'm saying that he is saying that he has suffered. And his client has suffered
injustice
because of the delays caused by ECMIS. But nonetheless, let's go back to Kenya.
I wanted to ask Jude before, and there are so many messages. People are saying that this is a good panel. Someone has just sent a message from Kamuli, saying that this panel full of lawyers is a very exciting one. Then said, is my friend Mapenduzi safe?
I'm very safe.
Zakaria Mapenduzi says he's very safe. And then another one says this is a completely sober panel. And whilst it is a good, while it is a compliment for this panel, I'm wondering whether others that we have been seeing are not sober.
You should actually inform them that none of us have threatened anybody to slap.
Even there are some boxing matches on some shows like this.
So no one is going to
I want to assure you that on this show there will be no punches, no slaps. The jabs are only intellectual. That's what we serve Uganda best. But Jude, someone has sent a message, Patrick, asking that what are the likely rulings that come out if this matter goes to court? What are the likely judgments, scenarios that come up?
I think we are looking at a couple of scenarios. One,
what are the orders that court can make?
Yes. Let's say if the dispute is purely about tallying, the court could order a recount, just a recount of the. If the dispute is, let's say if Raila's team,
if it is mathematical.
Yeah, if Raila's team is arguing, we won the election, our forms are here, we won. And the IEBC is saying, no, you actually lost. That's a simple recount. It wouldn't require, because you see, the court cannot start tallying those results to declare a winner by itself. That's why even in 2017, when there was that dispute over the integrity of the electronic transmission, they still appointed experts who gave them a report, and the report was adverse against the IEBC, indicating that whatever had been transmitted could not be confirmed. So the first scenario would be probably a recount of the results.
Okay, starting with that scenario, you court have orders. Usually court have orders. They operate through orders.
Yeah.
When you say, this guy was asking a number of scenarios. When you say court can order a recount, do they order and say go back to IEBC and recount, in which case they are giving back to someone work which they failed to do, hence coming to court, or do they say count here in court?
No, it would be what is called a court supervised recount.
Okay.
A court supervised recount. We've had a few at the local level here.
Rubaga is one of the.
Oh yes,
famous
Rubaga. And now, thank you very much. You said, thank you very much that you brought the one of Singh versus
Singh
Katongole with
Moses
Kasibante. In that case, court actually, when it was court supervised, they discovered that Singh, who had been declared, got less votes, and they said it is now Kasivante supposed to be in parliament, for which he was in parliament. So can that be done in such a situation?
Yes,
at Supreme Court?
Once court chooses to tally, a court supervised tally, they don't even have to use the IEBC, by the way. They could choose to
can choose an independent.
In light of this dispute,
independent body to come and tally.
They can choose even parties and
it's an inquiry. It becomes an inquiry. It ceases to be adversarial. Adversarial.
So it's that's an option
for purposes of deepening the democracy and all that.
Yeah.
But
no, because you see,
the will of Kenyans.
Tallying is an expert exercise. So obviously you need people who know how to tally statistics, coordinate. You know, it looks a simple thing, but
it's complex.
It's not as easy as that.
It is not as easy as 0.01%.
Yes. Two, the court could choose to annul the entire election, depending on what the complaint is, and ask them to do a rerun within 60 days, which is what their constitution provides. Thirdly, the court could dismiss the petition. And that's the end of it, like happened in 2000.
That it has no merit.
7 and say it has no merit.
Mutunga.
And
other Dr. Mutunga.
So it's primarily those are the options that you're looking at. Now, maybe the final one on that is what is going to guide in taking a decision in any of those scenarios? What drives it? You earlier mentioned that this case, this difference was so close, and therefore it is easy to challenge and all that. There are a couple of issues. You see, the allegations which will be made by the relative team if they choose to petition, as we anticipate, also dictate how the court treats it. If they apply to the court for a recount, especially if their case is that he won the election, and they say they have the evidence to back them up, it takes a different dimension. But I've seen some of the complaints, they have summarized. For example, when you complain that your agents were denied access to tallying, clearly, that's something to do with the quality of the election. So it may be very difficult to go into the results with such a kind of allegation. Or an allegation where you are saying, in Mount Kenya area, our agents were not allowed to go to the polling stations. That's something to do with the quality of the election. And if the court agrees, then they can only order a recount. Unfortunately, what puzzles the public, there may be an irregularity in only one polling station. But if nullifying that polling station means there would be a different winner, and the court is reluctant to declare a different winner, they will order a re-election in the entire constituency, which for a presidential election is the entire country. Meaning, because this is a small margin of 200,000 votes, if the petitioner successfully persuades the justices that there are irregularities which cost me whether 300,000 votes, whether in Mombasa, whether in Kakamega, whether in the Mount Kenya area, and the court agrees, that's enough for them to have a rerun.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a thing
Yes,
we're missing out. You know, many times in situations like this, where there's been a very close contest for
a position.
And in the heart of hearts, they know who won between the two.
In the hearts of who?
Of the two, Raila and
Ruto.
Or one could even say Uhuru and Ruto, because it was the deep state against. But
Raila and Ruto.
Raila and Ruto.
Within them, they know.
They know because they did their simulations, and they believe me, by Friday, Saturday, when we're going to the weekend, there was already that.
By Thursday, I think.
Thursday, but more like they knew who was clearly taken it, and that's why you see they've not been belligerent in their approaches. So what I'm trying to bring to the fore is that many times in a context like this, candidates go to court, one, to put the pressures down from their colleagues, to save face.
Yeah.
2, it could be just to build the jurisprudence.
Yeah.
3, to say we gave it our best. That's it. But taking lessons.
But also 4 could be they have genuine concern.
Maybe Edgar, briefly on the conduct of the parties after their own independent tallies. We had an interaction with the head of AU Observer Mission, and we made a special request that he prevails on the parties not to call the election. Because of course, what happened in 2007.
Did some want to call the election?
No, you see, when
to announce themselves winner. Because they already started the party.
Emotional. So we made a specific request to His Excellency Ernest Koroma to appeal to the 2 major candidates not to call the election, but also to appeal to the sitting president on matters of transition.
But Charles,
especially
there
in
is
case
something.
Just hold on a bit.
There is something.
Just hold on, Honorable Mapinduzi, just let her flow.
Just in case his favorite candidate loses, because we thought also that Uhuru needed preparation.
Yeah. Actually, Kenya has an act governing presidential transition.
Yes, the transition.
The ceremony
committee had put in place.
Yes, but in addition to that, the African Union has an interesting observer mission, the post-election diplomacy.
Let's listen to Sarah.
The post-election preventive diplomacy mission. So they had another mission coming in Kenya, headed by the former president of Burundi, the Elders Committee, for post-election, for post-election purposes, but also to further prevail on the parties to make sure. So that's why they were not calling
there's a parallel I want to draw. In 1997, Mwai Kibaki, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, filed a petition against Daniel Torotich Arap Moi. The 2 had been the protagonists in that election. So they attempted to serve Moi on the petition. Now, Moi's guards prevented the court service process of court service. Do you know what happened? When they went to court, the judges who had the petition were very happy to dismiss the petition on the ground that there was no personal service on President Moi. So we have come a very long way. And that you can see that there's a confidence. Now, this confidence can only be built if you test the systems. And like I said earlier, a system is only as good as its checks and balances.
Charles, there is something I wanted Sarah to throw more light on. At the start of your submission, you say your team, of course I belong to another team, that after the whole process, you were able to, of course you also did your own tallying.
Yes.
All right?
So she knows the winner.
Yes, that's what I wanted to know. Yes, they did their own tally.
Do you agree that that is okay?
Well, here is okay.
No,
the panel, do you agree that
no, they
okay
declared.
for Sarah to do?
But the observers declared. They declared.
Let me finish.
They declared.
So what I'm trying to...
I missed that.
Yes, what I'm driving at is that one, Sarah said, they did their own tally, which they later on declared.
Yesterday.
Number two, they also gave out their findings. So please share with us.
Since this is their public, share with us.
If you declare, then you share. What did you do?
The civil society organizations were running a parallel voter tabulation, a survey method, just to check the credibility of the results. So it's not that this method produces the winner, but it can give an indicative result.
Give it.
So it is a scientific method, and it's a...
You know,
so
in Ugandan parlance, scientific means other things.
And of course, in our methods, you can't run it here. So, but the result that was produced was close to what IEBC announced. So the Ruto had scored 50.7 in that survey.
Yes.
His final result was 50.48. And the Raila had scored 48.9. And he later scored 48.8 something. So, but it's not, but it's meant to check the credibility of the result. It's not meant to announce the winner.
Okay.
So I think that should be clear.
Okay. No, it's clear as you put it.
Yes.
I think that is close to what they announced.
Is that clear as you put it?
Yeah. Yes, Doctor.
I know we've spent quite a bit of time discussing the role of the court in this process. I would like to believe there are other power centers that we normally do not discuss for a variety of reasons, maybe because we are colonial, we are colonies of Great Britain and so on and so forth, Kenya and ourselves, Tanzania as well, with this checkered history. But I think that for a while now, we've had other political or other power centers that could play a big role, that are even more homegrown. I see, for example, you know, we've made reference to Jakaya Kikwete, we've made reference to the former president and others, but we have not made reference, and maybe for the EU. Yeah, for purposes of Kenya, probably not too much, but even for Uganda, I strongly believe that our traditional cultural leaders play such an important role in post-election conversations. Unfortunately, they have been kept out of the discussion.
The church was involved.
No, in Uganda, our cultural leaders are barred from participating.
The Kenyan churches and the religious centers were involved. Very involved.
Yes. So I was saying that yes, we probably I may not know who the cultural traditional leaders in Kenya may be and what role they could play, but I think lessons for Uganda are that we do have cultural traditional leaders who've in the past actually at a lower level played specific roles in helping our post-election or even pre-elections periods. Even the religious leaders have played interesting roles, calling belligerent people together and saying, look, you all
not deepening the crisis.
I know of specific constituencies whereby they have asked two leaders from the same religious affiliation to have a conversation and let one person move ahead to keep that cohesion.
Okay.
And my question is that, isn't it time that we start having the conversations, especially when it comes to enabling traditional cultural leaders to play a more constructive, foresighted role in the elections of their nations, in the elections of their regions?
Would that call for amending of, is it 246? Article 246, is it? the one?
And more importantly,
that,
the
that bars, constitutionally bars cultural leaders from
Yes.
active participation.
Yes, as well
in
as
politics.
the Traditional Institutions Act.
Yeah.
I think that for a while now, we have kept them out of the picture. And yet they've been quite effective in other things. For example, encouraging
mobilization
and so on and so forth, immunization,
mediation
and
in
things
their
like
local
that.
groups.
I think we continue to blame the courts. But the courts are such a small group of people who
At
are
the
not
end-
able.
actually, at the end of
yes, and they may
this
not be able to handle just the sheer volumes of conflict that normally happen in societies.
I will consider that as your final submission, because we have now.
If that is your ruling,
you know, it is sweet to have the microphone charge, and because he's my lecturer at law school, so now I have taken the microphone away from him. But in 30 seconds, do you think that is something that we should include in arguments of you know, the national dialogue, if need be, because it would need the people are talking about that, the discussion.
We are forming a consensus
yes,
for a national dialogue
that you can put across.
Basically, what I'm saying is
because right now there is no policy or legal provision that would, you know, a pillar on which it would be made to stand.
Well, basically, what I'm saying is that we've had conversations about Uganda. Our election and constitutional petitions are clearly not going to be resolved within the time frames we would desire. Jude has been very clear on that one. The sheer volumes of work before the judicial officers are enormous at whatever levels. And my question is that depending on what we would agree, why don't we start thinking again, you know, and saying, look, we have other power centers. It may not even be a religious institution. It may be a cultural institution. It may not be a cultural institution. It may be something else that you can critically begin to think and say, look, instead of overwhelming our judiciary with all these matters, knowing very well that they will not be able to resolve them within the time frame that we want, isn't it time for us to begin thinking? Because Kenya is coming to Uganda very soon, you know. As Kenya develops, Uganda will continue picking leaves from Kenya, and a time may come when we'll have to ask the question that if I am not able to have my petition heard within 5 years, and that at the time it is heard, my term of office, if I told I was in parliament, has come to an end, shouldn't we start thinking critically of what are those other spaces where resolution of conflict, resolution of disputes.
Yeah, Sarah wants to follow you and conclude as well. Yes, Sarah.
Yes, in addition to what Dr. Reza is saying, I think in our discussion we have not talked about the nature of our elections. We just talked about the court side. But if you look at, for example, the 2021 elections, the Kayunga by-elections, the Soroto by-elections, you wake up, you arrest all polling agents of opposition, you arrest everybody. An election, a by-election is like a military war zone. So I think this is the element that we've missed in this discussion on what we can learn from Kenya. Can we have an election where citizens are free to participate and express their will, where the political parties are free to engage and seek people's mandate, where the army is out of our elections because it's not a war, where you have police doing professional work like we saw the police in Kenya, and where you have electoral commission in charge of elections instead of being a military operation. I think this is what we've not discussed.
Thank you, and I'm bringing Honorable Mapenduzi after this, but there is a message from Dr. Biavashaija, and he says, great behind the headlines presentation. Keep it up. Kudos to the panelists. And Then he laughed and made other comments and said greetings.
Is that the Commissioner General of Prisons?
Yes, he is watching. And thank you so much.
So we shall survive being jailed. He's
the chief jailer. And then, just in line with what Sarah said, someone from Kaviramai said, it's very beautiful to see from Kenya, Ruto and Raila tussling it out, and there is no army or police next to them, and that they may have problems, but I loved that. Honorable Mapenduzi, just very quickly,
thank you very much.
We have run out of time, 1 minute.
Two quick things. One, what we have to learn very quickly as a country is to start to open up, beginning to open the space, allowing different stakeholders to get involved. Just like Doctor put it, the question of when religious and cultural leaders are important comes in. Today we are talking about religious leaders playing a big role in, we are getting them to support the parish development model and cultural institution, and we are all talking about how do we grow as a country together using every stakeholder. I think it should not be, we should not limit it. We should allow, of course, as he put it, constructively, cultural leaders and religious leaders, and it helps in building the country faster. Number two, the other thing that is important is how do we pick from past experiences? Just as we stated, Kenya has learned so much, but have we learned a lot as a country? I think we need to begin now. Of course, it's difficult to say we have finished the learning from what Kenya election has been. Looks like another chapter is just starting from the court processes and all that. Last week I said we need to pray for Kenya. And so the praying has to continue, because even when the other party is contesting and looks like they're going to court, and we are not sure what is going to come out. But I think from what Kenyans have demonstrated, I think they're beginning to value their country more than political parties and politicking, and that should be the spirit we all build.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Dr. Tanga Odoi says, Charles, what will happen to the commission after 4 members rejected, yet it is the commission supposed to forward the name of the successful candidate to the Supreme Court?
That is the EC chairman of the NRM. So maybe he needs a committee. Chibukati of the NRM.
And then Council Edgar, your final word. But maybe before you come in, there is Billy who is watching and sent this and said, please, isn't this what you lawyers are supposed to refer to? And then he picked the provisions as to the conduct of the business and affairs of the Commission of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Committee, the second schedule. And he says, read section 7, which says, unless a unanimous decision is reached, a decision on any matter before the Commission shall be by a majority of the members present and voting. He said that you people must read this before you finish. So, Edgar, your final
my final word. We have a saying in my language, my mother tongue, Urufumbira, a dialect of the Kinyarwanda language. Ushakinha algiamankayo.
Now translate.
If you desire to grow your herd of cattle, you'll have to bear some consequences and live like the cattle. If we desire to deepen democracy in Uganda, strengthen democracy in Uganda, we shall have to adopt the culture of democratization. Nobody is going to do it for us. It won't fall from the sky. We'll have to be deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone from Kenya has just sent a message. Charles, I'm enjoying the talk show and your expertise in moderating the show. May God bless you, Charles. Amen. I'd cut out some part.
Are you sure the blessings for you alone or for all of us?
Are we all moderators here?
We are not sure why you decided to cut the other part.
The other part we shall share.
Keep it for yourself.
No, I will share with you off, because some of us don't, for humility's sake. But finally, Jude.
Yes, I think
what you read going forward and your closing
going forward,
remarks.
I think the most important lesson has already been re-echoed. I just re-emphasize it because it's important that it's actually possible for us even in Uganda to also have an election which is not necessarily a contest between some individuals and the state. You know? Because I think that's the biggest problem we now have in Uganda, that an election looks more like a contest between some individuals against the state. And we need to gradually move away from that. That's what I see. Moving forward, I'm hoping that Kenya can go through these legal processes as calmly as they waited for a week.
Yeah.
When they were tallying, I hope they can go through that. And
it was tough, man.
No matter the outcome.
The wait was too long, man.
It may not be so easy to be. It obviously feels, I think, the role of Raila Odinga cannot be Edgar alluded to it, cannot be downplayed in the democratization of Kenya. And it may feel very harsh on him, but really, of course, it looks very also, it may not be easier to be 2 times lucky with petitions. I think his landmark petition already did great work, and no matter how it ends, I personally think he has made his mark on Kenya.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. I really appreciate your presence. I really appreciate your time. We don't take it for granted. And we want to appreciate Edgar, Council Rueza, Council Edgar, Jude, and then Honorable Mapenduzi and the Council Sarah. Thank you very much for your time. And as we always say, you know, knowledge that you share with the country is very important. To the rest of you who sent us messages, we really appreciate, and keep participating in this discussion and always give us a feedback. As we close, we lost Nebi Diocese. We lost a Bishop Emeritus, Martin Luloga. The burial was today, and on behalf of Behind the Headlines, our sympathies with the Catholic fraternity, the Christians of Nebi Catholic Diocese, and the entire Episcopal Conference of Uganda. Thank you very much, but may the soul of Bishop Luluga rest in peace. He was a peaceful man, so we pray for his soul. And from Behind the Headlines to the whole country, to the whole world, indeed, those who watch this show, thank you very much, and keep watching this show every Wednesday from 10 p.m. And God bless you all. Bye-bye.